I'm about to do the hive inspection of the hives at the community garden, and when I first get up here I noticed a really bad smell, and what you'll notice is there are a ton of dead bees in front of this hive, a whole pile of dead bees. Some of them are still alive, and when you go over here on the side, more dead bees, tons of dead bees. This hive is a pesticide kill and probably won't survive. We're not going to start with it because I was going to take some honey. So we're going to start with the little hive, but I'm just so sad. Okay, I'm going to try to get the dying pesticide hive out of my mind and look at this little hive. So I'm going to start by lighting my smoker like we always do. Again, this is Linda Tillman, and we're at the Morningside Community Garden, and today is Thursday, and we're going to light our smoker. So this is a little ball of pine straw that I put in the bottom of the smoker, and then I'm going to light it. It always takes me a while. I'm not very good at lighting. And then you go puff, puff, puff to get it started. And once it's flaming pretty well, then you add more little bitty balls of pine straw till you have what you think might be enough to enough fuel to go through the inspection. Unless you put it out, which I'm also good at. If you stuff this first little ball of pine straw down too hard on the original ball, you smother the fire. So you don't want to do that. Some more. Just a little bit more and then we're done. Still burning okay. There we go. Okay, so now this hive that we're going to inspect first, those of you that have been here before will remember, is a small hive that my friend Julia made for me from a Queen Castle nuke. And so it started out as only 3 frames. I'm going to pop, pop, pop and say hello at the front door and then set my smoker down. The hive started as a 3-frame hive in a Queen Castle, and it's survivor bees from a guy named Mike Casera, and we're hoping that this will be a good survivor colony, and this other colony that's been poisoned may need our help. So the first thing I do is unloosen the strap, because I have it strapped because it's such a light hive and there's so much wind up here. And we take off the top. Oh, I forgot to look at the front of the hive first, which is the first thing you should always do. So let's look and see the bees flying in and see what we notice. So watch really well, and what we want to see is a lot of bees coming in and out, which there are a good number of, given how little this hive has been. They don't like the smoke, and I should have done this watching the front door before we put the smoke in front of it. So what we're looking for, though, is a bee flying in with pollen on her legs. I'm going to move the smoker, see if that'll help, because they're flying up to the hive and saying, "What is this? I don't want to go in." So keep looking for pollen on the leg of a bee, because that'll mean that the queen is laying. If we don't see pollen, then we got to worry a little bit. So far, no pollen. It's not good. Maybe that was, I'm not sure. There's a trapeze bee hanging on a blade of grass to get into the hive. At least there are no dead bees in front of the hive, even if they're not bringing in pollen. Anybody see any yet? I haven't yet, but I'm worrying about the other thing and not really doing a good job of paying attention. Okay, so I'm going to call it a day. So we have one worry as we go into the hive, that we haven't seen bees coming in. At least I haven't. If one of y'all has, speak up when you're looking at the movie. but I'm not seeing bees coming in with pollen on their legs, which is not a good sign. And it may mean that we killed the queen. And remember, we moved this from a big box to this smaller box in the last inspection, and it may be that I killed the queen in that process. I certainly hope not, but we're sure not seeing signs of a laying queen from out here, and we'll figure it out when we look at the hive itself. Okay, I'll get this so you can see, and I'll move the smoker back in front of the door. So given that we didn't see that, one of the things, see, this is going to be, I hope this is going to be a great inspection. And instead what this is going to be is a kind of emergency inspection. We've got this hive that potentially doesn't have a queen. We have the hive that's been poisoned, and the hive that we are going to take a frame of brood, the frame of honey off of, I hope. So something bad's bound to happen over there too. So we take off the inner cover, and they still have not moved up to this box. We didn't really expect them to, especially if I killed the queen. So now we're going to put a hive drape over the hive. It does look like a lot of bees, more bees than we saw last time. So that's the good news. Now we're going to very carefully look for signs of the queen. Either eggs and brood, which would be a sign that we had a queen, or a queen cell, which would be a sign that I killed her last week, and they are making a new one from an egg that was already laid. So this is a nice frame of worker brood. Lots of worker brood in there. Now let me see if I see any eggs or any young larvae. Mostly what I see on this frame, there's some larger larvae, which still might mean there's a queen because it's been a week since I've been here. See in there, there's lots of larvae. And are there any eggs? I don't see any. Okay. I need to say to anybody who doesn't remember this about me that my hands shake all the time, and I'm so not nervous that my hands do shake all the time. I have something called essential tremor. So it doesn't kill you, but it doesn't go away. Okay, I'm seeing lots and lots of larvae. There's a ton of larvae on this side of the frame, just a ton, all in there. But I don't see any eggs. And let's see if I see the queen. This would be a good frame to look on with all this larvae. But I don't see the queen either. So I'm gonna get the frame rack and hang it on the side of the hive. Now you notice I took the second frame out. That's what I always do, is take out the second frame from the side, because it's nicer for the bees when you put it back in to take the second frame from the side. I'm going to cover this with a hive drape, and then let's look at this frame that is against the wall and see what they're doing with it. There's a brand new comb on it. Now last week there was no comb on this. So that's good. Now these are bigger cells, and they're probably going to use it for honey. But they're not using it for eggs. They're making those for nectar. Alright, so far I haven't seen a queen cell. I've seen lots of larvae. Small enough that probably does mean the queen is still around, but I'd sure like to see an egg. It would make me happy. Okay, here's another frame of brood. Now this one is a foundationless frame, so I have to be a little more careful about how I hold it. And I think I see an egg. Hold on. Yeah. There are eggs right above my hive tool. Let's see what you can see. Let's see, where is it? their eggs right above my hive tool. So now we don't have to worry about the queen. We know she's okay. That's the good news. And this little hive, despite not bringing in pollen, seems to be doing okay in their new living situation. They don't seem unhappy, so I'm happy. So we're not going to look at them anymore, because having scared myself that I might have killed the queen, I really don't want to take the chance this time. So we've seen what we need to see, which is that they don't need a new box. They've got one. They just haven't moved up to it yet. And that they do have a queen who's laying eggs. So with that, we're going to stop this. We're going to close up this hive and call it a day on this hive. So take off the hive drapes, put it back on the top box very carefully, because there are bees all over here. So I'm going to sort of encourage them to get out of the way. Get out of the way, girls. This is called the carousel method, where you go kind of around to get the hive box back on. And we'll put the top back on and put the telescoping cover back on. Get our hive strap. Tighten it up. Oh, it's undone. No wonder. All right, let's see. Oh, okay, now it's all hooked back up together, and we're going to go grieve over the hive that's in the process of dying. Let's start at the beginning with this hive, and I'm going to see if I can't take you down real close so you can see all the dead bees. And there are bees, so many dead bees. This is just a huge, thousands of dead bees in here, all the way out to here and all the way around to there. And it smells bad enough that this didn't happen yesterday. I hope that's not the queen and it's just like a drone, but there's a bee in here having spasms. I think it's just a drone. I couldn't get hold of it or turn it over. But look at these poor bees dragging bees, because that's what they do. Oh, how awful. And they're all dying from whatever poisonous flower they went to. All right, looks like the man across the street from the garden just did that horrible Mr. mosquito thing, Mosquito Joe. So maybe it's because of him. I just hate those people. I know they're trying to make a living, but do they have to do it at the expense of bees? It's almost more than I can stand. So this hive, which was doing great, is now dying, and it'll be amazing if it lives. We'll see. Let me go get the smoker. I hate to smoke them because they've been through so much, but I'm going to. So smoke, that really upset them. Of course, it upset them last week when they didn't have a bunch of dead bees in front of the hive. Oh my goodness. All right, let's see where would be better for you to be. Okay, we'll start there. I don't even know what to say. This upsets me. This was a great swarm from Inman Park, and now they're sick. Since they've been busy dying, they haven't made any new honey. So this is what the new box we put in last week, and they've done absolutely nothing. It's all the same as it was last week. We're not going to bother this hive a whole lot because they're in the process of dying, and it just doesn't seem fair. Oh, just makes me sick. But there's a way you can report a pesticide kill, which I will definitely do. See, this is a drone who's just having, he can't even hold himself together. Oh. And this box looks the same as when we left it too. They have built some comb in the empty frames, but not a lot from the new box we gave them. I'm just not gonna disturb them. This just feels like a horrible time to me for this hive. And I hope they don't all die. Do you think they're gonna all die? What happens is a bee comes back with poison on her body and tells her sisters that they need to go to the flower where the poison is, because she doesn't know it's poisoned. And then they die, and they don't let them be dead in the hive, so they're all kicked out front. That's how we know how many of them have died. I took pictures, I think. If I didn't, I'm gonna do before I leave, to send to places where you report a pesticide kill. I'm just sick about it. I mean, what can you say when something like this has happened? And there's not anything to do. There's nothing I can't make them healthy. And, oh, that's got so much on in it. Oh. I can't make them healthy, and I can't fix the problem. So all I can do is be sad and hope that they can survive, enough of them, that enough of them aren't poisoned. It's rained for 2 days. It may be that disrupted it smells bad enough that I think they were dead before the rain, and maybe the rain disrupted their going to the poisonous plant. And let's just hope for that. I'm gonna take out this frame just to see what they look like inside the hive. Oh, I forgot to look and see if you can see down. I'm down far enough in the box that maybe you can't. There we go. This has got me so upset that I'm rattled and not thinking well about this inspection. I'm sorry. Okay, let's see. So one of the ways you know it's a pesticide kill, first of all, the smell of dead bees was just overwhelming. But the other is that you see piles of dead bees on the ground writhing, which these were doing. And it's because their nervous system is messed up with the poison that they've ingested. This doesn't want to come out without my breaking the frame, and I don't want to make any trouble for them. I mean, breaking the honeycomb. So I think we're going to just leave these girls alone and not look at anything in here unless I see one frame we might be able to look at without causing too much distress. That's what my mother would say. She is. It's just, I was so excited about doing this with you all, and this has just deflated me. But maybe it'll be fun to harvest some honey from the other hive. I'm not going to take any from this hive because it just feels like I can't do it. I don't want to do anything to diminish any part of the end of their existence. But if they're dead next week, we'll take everything out of this hive. So these are the great big cells that they put honey in. Isn't that pretty? Beautiful, huge cells. And when you give them their own foundation, and I broke some honeycomb when I pulled it out, but when you give them their own foundation, they build huge cells for honey. Huge. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? All right, I do not want to distress this colony any more than I already have. And we're going to call it a day and just wish for the best for them for next week. In that case, we'll go down and see how much damage is done. Was the queen killed in this process? We'll know next week. I would say right now that the queen isn't dead because they're not acting angry, but she might be sick, for all we know. could I upset their life by coming in their hive today? You go back and die over there. Maybe you won't die. Please don't have poison on you. But their nervous systems get messed up and they tremble, and just, it's really sad to see what goes on with them. I don't know if these drones are poisoned or not, but they're all both just shaking like crazy. See, he's just not, of course maybe he's shaking because my hands are shaking. Giving him a little stimulation there. Okay, go back. I wish I could rescue you, but I really can't. Go on back. Now there's a bee here. Oh, she gave up. She was trying to carry this dead bee out of the hive. She doesn't want the dead bee in the hive. She was trying to carry it out of the hive, and it's bigger than she is. I'm gonna do her the favor. Okay, so much for that hive. So if you're gonna take honey out of a hive, the first thing you do is get prepared. So this is a nuke box that I've brought with 5 frames in it. I've taken 2 of them out of it because I'm getting ready to put honey in the place where those 2 were. And you don't ever take honey back in a box without the box being completely full of frames. So I wouldn't have brought an empty nuke box, because an empty nuke box would mean that the 2 frames I hope to take would slide around on the way home and likely break the cappings. So by putting it in a full box, I managed to keep it from breaking, hopefully. I mean, I may get home and it's broken anyway. And the towel is because I need to cover the box up the second I put honey in it, because I don't want to take bees home with me. And they're going to be interested in my doing that, in staying with the honey. Okay, so let's start by looking at the front of this hive. Lots of bees with pollen on their legs right here at the get-go. Let's see what you can see. It's really hard through the veil with the sun. Okay. All right, look and see. I see a bee with pollen right there. She's got white pollen on her legs, or light yellow. And there are no dead bees in a pile on the front of this hive. For those of you who haven't been here when I put the robber screen on, that's a robber screen. We have them on both hives. It helps the hive prevent robbery. And I just saw pollen going into the dead hive, by the way, which means that the queen is still alive and laying. Yay! Okay, so you see pollen on the front. There are 2 bees with pollen, so we can feel hopeful about this hive. So I'm going to take the smoker. And those of you that have seen this before, haven't they adjusted better? Now my hive toolkit has broken a handle off of it, and so I didn't bring it, so I don't have my clippers, but the next time I come I probably am. I keep saying I'm going to cut the grass around the hive, but for me it also feels kind of protective of the bees not to cut the grass. So it gives them a way to be safely in and out of the hive without too much of a problem. Now, I'm for sure going to take the top box off, so I'm going to leave you all looking not quite at the top, because in the end you'll be looking at the top of what I'm going to be looking at. Okay, so I'm getting all prepared for honey, and I hope, and that's really all we're going to do in this hive. We're not going to go down. We've seen a queen, and not the queen, but the queen, evidence of the queen in the other hive. So in this hive we're going to take honey and see if they need an extra box. Both things may be true. It's nice when you open the hive and you can see lots of bees on the top of the hive. That makes you feel good, makes me feel good anyway, because I know that the hive is functioning okay. Okay, so now I'm going to take off the inner cover. And so far in none of my hives, not my hives at home or my hives here, have I seen any small hive beetles. It is something we'll start seeing, but probably more in June. take off the inner cover, get a hive drape. And these guys have a new box, and because of the weather, I'm sure they also haven't put, and because the nectar flow slowed way down, they also haven't put anything in the new box for us to be excited about. We may take the honey that's in this box actually, but we'll look at it in just a second. Okay, and then there's this box. Okay, this one has some pretty frames. I've also had some angry bees. They keep bumping my head and buzzing around me. I think I'm gonna take this box off too and look at the one underneath it. You know, oh, this one's heavy. It's got a lot of honey. When you're working bees, you're constantly making decisions. That's why it's as much an art as it is a science. So there's a constant decision-making process going on about what do I really want out of this? Where am I going? Why am I going there? I'm asking myself those questions this whole time. Where am I going? Why am I going there? Is this a good idea? I think I'm gonna have to go stand on the dead bees in order to answer it. That's not but that's what I'm gonna do. Okay, sorry girls who are dead and dying. Okay. Oh, it smells so bad over here. Sorry you can't take smell through the video camera. Okay, so we have our hive rack set up. We're gonna see what's going on in this hive. It smells so bad where I'm standing. Okay, first I have to get my hair out of my face so I can see what I'm seeing in here. So we're gonna look at this frame, which is the second frame in, and see what it looks like. It's easier to get out frames when it's hotter because the heat makes the propolis softer. And look, I'm tearing up the frame and more able to move around. All right, I've got to break a little comb. This one has cross combed to the other side. I have to break a little comb to get this one, but I'm going to do it. I hate doing that. See, that should go into our honey but we're not going to take it. But anyway, there you go. That's what that one looks like. I'm a little worried to take it out and hang it on the rack because I broke it like that. And instead, I'm going to take this one. We're going to actually take this one home with me. Okay, so this is a fully capped, this is wax that's fully capped. That is great. The ideal comb to take home. It's not fully capped on the back, but it also doesn't have honey on the back. So what we're going to do is what you do, which is, let me get the brush. Okay, I want all of the bees off of this comb. So I'm going to lean it like this and brush them. There are not very many bees on here. So I want to get them off. Now this side has a lot, so I'm going to shake it. And then I'm going to brush it. And the reason they're there is because there's some broken comb. And this one has this odd double layer of comb, and there's some bees in there. I can see them. But you inevitably are going to take a few bees home. You just don't want to take a whole frame full of bees home. Go, 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 go. Okay, having brushed them off, carry it over here. So I carry it over here. I put it in the box right there, and I throw the towel over the box to keep bees from going in there to get the honey. Now over here we have a problem because I tore the comb open. So we don't want them to keep doing that. So we're going to turn this frame around as we put it back into the box so that it is not up against what they did before, and we'll make them do it differently. So now, oh, I should taste this, right? Mmm, delicious. Wow, is that good. Okay, so now I have an empty frame that I will put back in the place of that one when we close this box up. Okay, let's see if there, we probably aren't going to take another frame out of this box, but I am going to cut this comb that shouldn't be there out. Let's see if I can get it. All right, the rest of these are not fully capped. At least this one isn't, the next one isn't. So I'm not going to do anything else in this box. We might take another frame, but we'll take it out of a different box. Have one of the ones that's on the ground. So now we're going to put this one, ooh, I don't want to lose that piece of honeycomb. I'll put this right here to take the place of the frame we stole. Oh shoot, it ended up on the ground anyway. So I'm going to pause the video, brush it off, and chew up this honeycomb. Except, you know, the little hive was doing great, so we can feel good about that. And the big hive is doing okay. It slowed down on nectar collection 2 weeks ago, you remember? And it doesn't look like it's done much in the last week, which is not so much about the hive as it is about the nectar flow. Okay, let's see what we could take out of this top box, or can we? These pitiful dying bees. If any of you have ever had a dying hive, you know how the smell is. It's just horrible. And they're like, really? You're going to steal from us? And we're in this bad shape? And you come in and it'll be just a common thief? Yes, is the answer to that. But maybe not. This isn't a full frame of capped honey. I'm not. Let's take this one out to give us some room. And so I can see what's going on without pulling the frame out if I don't have to, which would be nicer for the bees. Oh, it smells awful. Oh, this one is capped. So, sorry girls, stealing from the dying. That's what I'm gonna do. This poor drone is on his back and unhappy. There you go, honey. Okay. Okay, in preparation for this, I need to get my bee brush. I'm a very messy beekeeper. I drop equipment all over the place. So we pull this up and it's beautiful capped honey. Look at that. So pretty. And it's capped on the other side too. It's capped on both sides. So the first thing we do is we go shake, 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 shake to get the bees off of it. Then we take the bee brush and we brush them off. They don't like to be brushed. They really don't. Off, off, off. Off, off, off. Shake, 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 shake. Okay, now I'm gonna walk with them real quick over to the box. And I'm gonna rest it right here for just a second and get another couple of brushes off. Don't want any bees in there. Flip this back, pull out another frame, put this in. This in, put an empty frame here so I don't mess up the comb that's in here and not in here great. And do like this, move this over, move this over, put this in. I usually move faster than this, but I have to do too much adjusting here. All right, all that's in there. I need one more frame to keep it from bumping and grinding and hitting itself. And then I cover this up quick like a rabbit so the bees don't get back in it. So there you go. Okay, so now we come back over here and we've got to repair the damage that we just did. Okay, so they need frames back in their box, assuming some of them are going to live to see another day. So we put these back in here, take the bees off, put the top on, so sorry for your loss, girls, for all of your losses. And maybe they'll still be alive next week, especially since we saw brood and eggs. I mean, since we saw pollen coming in, that's hope for the future. But it's going to be a really damaged hive at this point, and I hope that they can recover. So we're going to stop up here on the hill and go back to my house and harvest honey. Okay, hi everybody. So I'm back from the hives. It's actually the next day, and I'm going to put the honey, I'm going to now harvest the honey from the frames. There are several ways to harvest honey. Some people use what is an extractor. An extractor is, I've used one only twice, and I will never use one again unless I become a commercial beekeeper. It's huge and you waste a whole lot of honey, and in her life a bee only makes 1/4 of a teaspoon of honey, and it sort of kills me to wash honey down the drain, which you do a lot of when you use an extractor. So I do something called crush and strain, and it helps when you do crush and strain to do the kind of frames that I do, which is foundationless, but you can also do crush and strain using a spatula if you have foundation in your frame. So I'm going to show you first what you have to get ready to harvest honey. So first we have a honey bucket, and this honey bucket, let me make sure you can see it. Here it is. Okay, the first thing you need is a honey bucket, which is what this is, and the honey bucket has this honey gate on the bottom of it, which opens up so that the honey can come out through that little hole into the bottles. We won't do that quite yet. It has a top, and it has a filter system. And the filters, there are 3 filters in the honey, and they're stacked from coarse to fine. Only I need to restack them because these are not stacked coarse to fine. So the first level of filter that it goes through is the coarse filter, which is 600 microns. The second one is the medium filter, which is 400 microns. And they stack together really easily. And the last filter the honey goes through is the fine filter, which is 200 microns. And I always filter my honey this way. I've heard several people say you don't have to use the 200 micron unless you want show quality honey, but I want show quality honey even if I'm not going to enter it in the honey show, which I don't usually. Okay, so this bucket I'm going to take, and I'm going to put on the floor. And I have it on the floor on 2 garbage bags so that I can protect my floor. I have the table covered up in, this is not oilcloth, but this is plastic coated material that I have this done for a table. I wanted to have a round table with a cover on it, so that's what I had that done for. And it makes a good protection for my table because we're in my dining room. And I've also washed my hands. I forgot to tell you to wash your hands, but I washed my hands before we got started. The other things that you need are something to crush the honey with. This is like a pestle, and it'll be a good honey crusher. And then this is a refractometer, which we'll use to see if our honey, this is a refractometer, and we'll use to see if our honey has the right moisture level, which is 18.6%. And then a knife to cut the honey off of the frame. So, and I have these filters over here just to show you. And this is wax from a previous harvest. See if you can see it. Yeah, that's wax from our previous harvest. And you can see our honey frames in the nuke box. And here's the container that we're going to be crushing the honey in. And here we go. So I'm going to get the bucket over. I'm going to move the bucket a little bit over so it's a little bit out of my way. And uncover the nuke. Get that frame out of the way. Might need a hot tool to get it. Here we go. And take the first frame of honey. So here's the first frame of honey. It's absolutely beautiful. Now, I'm not going to do this today. Today we're going to crush it, but I'm going to show you that if I were going to make cut comb honey, and cut comb honey you display in a 4-inch box, then I would take my knife and cut a 4-inch square. I have a model for it, but it's in the basement and I didn't think about that I could show you this. But I'm going to cut a 4-inch square out of this frame, and because it's this beautiful white cappings, this is the kind of honey that wins prizes in honey shows. And so I cut that out of the frame, and if I were going to do cut comb honey, then I would cut it out of the frame just like this, and then I have this beautiful little square, and it has to drain, and then I can put it, can you see the square? And it has to drain, and then I'd put it in a box, but I'm not doing that today. The other kind of honey that people enter honey shows and that people like to have is something called chunk honey. And chunk honey, you put a chunk of honey in a jar and then pour liquid honey around it. So let me get a spatula and I'll show you how I get that. So if you're wanting to harvest chunk honey, you want to cut a chunk, but you don't want it to fall. You want to protect it as best you can. So you cut the chunk the width of the jar, it falls onto the spatula, which protects it. I lift the frame out of the way, I just damaged it. And then I would slide it into the jar like this so that there's a chunk of honey in the center of the jar, and then you fill the area around it with crushed with liquid honey. But we're not doing either of those today. Today we're going to simply crush and strain the honey and bottle it. But I wanted you to see how simple it is. People don't enter the honey contest enough with chunk honey, and they should, because it's such an easy way to do it. So now to do crush and strain, I'm going to cut the rest of the honey off of the frame. Now if you had foundation, as opposed to this, which is not foundation, you can take your spatula and run it down the foundation and scrape the honey off, and then turn around and do it on the other side. But because I don't have foundation, I can do it this way. Now this frame is going to continue to drip honey because there's honey up here in the top and there's honey on the sides. And I will put it outside and the bees will enjoy what they can get from it. They won't enjoy it as much as when we are in a dearth, but right now we're not in a dearth. Now typically I have a pan around to catch those drips. So let me go get something for that. Meanwhile, I'll stop and wash the honey off of my hands for just a second, because it's hard to work well with the camera and honey all over my hands. Okay. So typically when I am harvesting, I have another pan sitting around to set the dripping frames in so that they can continue to drip while I'm working. Okay, now since this came out of one hive and that came out of a different hive, just for the heck of it, we're going to check with the refractometer each of these honeys to see what their moisture level is, because they may be different from the different hives. So this is a refractometer, and I have to clean it off. That doesn't mean clean like alcohol cleaner that I need soap and water. I just need to have no honey in there. And then I take a little bit of honey from the honey that's here, just a little bit of the liquid honey, and I put it on this. You're supposed to do a droplet. I guess I could do it right. So I suck a little droplet up, and I put a little drop right there, and then I shut the top, and I hold it up to the light, and it says that it's less than 17% moisture. So this is really good honey. This is going to be great honey. Okay, so now we take our mallet, our little mallet, and we're going to crush this honey. It's great. I'm a psychologist, or was a psychologist in real life before I retired, and this is great for anger management. You can go, you know, to get all your anger out while you're doing it. So I get mad at the coronavirus. Okay, so I'm crushing this honey like crazy. And you want to crush all the cells, because when you do it, what you're doing is you're releasing the honey. And any honey where the cell is still intact, the honey is not going to be able to flow through the filter. Now, very sadly, I'm going to be cutting up my chunk and my cut comb pieces. That makes me sad because they were very pretty, but here they go. If that hive that the chunk honey that this honey came from dies, and this is the one that came from the dying hive, if the hive dies, then we'll harvest the rest of their honey from them if the whole hive dies. But I'm thinking the whole hive might not die. So, okay. So I'm crushing this, crushing. You really have to do it. All right, so it looks like a good slurry right now. And for good measure, I'm going to go through it and do it one more time. I don't want to have some cells down there that aren't opened up, because I want this honey we're only harvesting 2 frames, so I want to get as much as we can from these 2 frames of honey. And I sure wish you were here to taste it. It's really good honey. All right, so, and it's wonderful when the bees have their own foundation like mine do, then they're building new wax every single year, which makes the honey harvest really easy, because the wax is easy to crush. If you pull a frame out of the hive that is not as, the wax is old, it's hard to crush because the wax is hard. And I want to show you something interesting about this wax that you learn when you look at the honey. You can see it from here. You see how the wax over here is kind of dark? I mean, the honey here is kind of dark, and the honey here is kind of dark, and this is light. That means that these are different nectar flows. Like this light honey is likely to have been put up before the tulip poplar started blooming, and this darker honey is honey that was put up when the tulip poplar bloomed, because tulip poplar makes darker honey. And I laid the thing in the I laid the comb in the pan pretty much the length of it, so that's probably how it was lined up, that on either side there was lighter honey. Okay, I forgot an important piece that I have to have, which is a rubber spatula. I'm going to go get that, and then I'm going to line you up so that you can see how I'm going to pour it into the jar. So let me set this camera over here where you can see how it's going to be poured, not into the jar, but into the bucket that it's going into. So you can see the bucket and you can see the pan. And let me see if I can do this so that you can watch me. Okay, so I have a rubber spatula. I don't want to waste any of this, because like I said, a bee in her lifetime only makes 1/4 teaspoon of honey. So I don't want to leave any of this behind, although we've got another frame to crush. All right, so I'm going to take this pan and bring it over here to the bucket. And I'm going to push the honey out of the pan and into the filter system. What great honey. That's a really low percentage of moisture. Now I didn't protect my floor on that side and I just got honey on the floor. Uh-oh. I shouldn't have let you see me lick my finger after I've washed my hands. But I promise I won't touch any of the honey until I go wash them again. Okay, so we're getting all the honey into the... It's very important to protect the surfaces in your house when you do this because honey is so sticky and it's ubiquitous. It just shows up absolutely everywhere. Now we don't need to do a perfect job of this because we've got another frame to crush and strain. So we're not gonna worry about do I get every single bit of this crushed wax into the filter system right now. We'll do. Okay, we got cut off a little bit in that last one, but now I'm going to do the second frame that we brought from the hives. And here it is. It's kind of odd because it has this little piece of comb sticking out. And you might notice there's some dirt in that comb, and that's from the frame that this honey was up next to. And it will not be a problem because the filter will get rid of it. It doesn't matter that it's there. Now again, this is so pretty that if I want to, this is not finished on both sides. So we're going to worry about, will this be moist enough? This may make that too wet, but we'll take it out and see. The other side is completely capped. And this is one I shouldn't have harvested. I shouldn't have harvested something with this much uncapped honey, but we will see what happens. Maybe it'll be dry enough despite that. So I'm cutting the honey off of the frame. I usually do it in sections because it's a little bit easier to manage the mess when you do it that way. Most honey in Atlanta is capped by Memorial Day. At least the beginning of it is capped by Memorial Day. And so that's why people don't typically harvest around here before Memorial Day. And so we were taking a chance, but I thought I checked both sides and apparently didn't. So, all right, so now we're going to get as much of this wax off of here as we can. This frame can go over in this pan, and we will crush. We'll check its moisture level after we'll crush it and then check its moisture level. Okay, here we go. We're crushing the honey just like we did the last time. In your own hives, do not do what I did with this and take out a frame that has some uncapped honey, because that honey is going to be too wet and may really make this not an okay. It may change my decision. I may put this in a different bucket from the first bucket so that its moisture level doesn't affect the first bucket. Now this is all light honey. So this is all honey that was probably collected pre-tulip poplar. Clover honey is light. I don't know what the other light honeys are, but the tulip poplar tends to be really dark. And so because this is so light, we know it's probably not much tulip poplar. There's a lot of privet blooming right now, and people don't like the way privet honey tastes. It has a little sharp taste at the very end, but I like it. Okay, so now I'm going to clean my little crusher off. You could use a potato masher, but it's a little bit messier. I like this wooden pestle. It works very nicely for me, and we'll put it over here so it can keep dripping. Okay, now we're going to check the moisture on this one. So I've got to get the honey off from the last little test we did. If this turns out to be higher moisture than the other one, or higher than 18.6%. 18.6% is what honey should be in order to be classified as honey. We put the droplet on here. and close the top, and I will look up at the light. And it's still fine. It's 17. It's not even 18%. It's about 17.6% moisture. So even with the uncapped honey, it's going to be okay. So we're going to go ahead and put it in with the other because they're both at about the same level of moisture. I think before I do that, I'm going to taste a little bit of this to see how different does it taste from the last one we did. It'll be nice. Those two together will be nice. This is a very light honey. It probably is holly. Okay, I'm going to pause and go wash my hands since I just licked my thumb. And you all can just admire that beautiful honey. Okay, back from hand washing, and now I'm going to put this into the same filter system that we have the other honey in. Now what we're doing with this is we're combining different honeys from two hives, and commercial people do this all the time. I rarely do this. Mostly for me, I'll harvest the honey from one hive and keep that separate from the honey from the other hive. But this light honey will be nice in this this mixture, and it'll be fine. It is the first time in all my beekeeping that I've combined the honey. It doesn't make any difference. So if any of you are wondering why would you keep it separate, I guess there really isn't any reason to. Okay, I am not loving this rubber spatula, so I'm going to put this up here and get a different one that might be better at doing the final cleaning of the pan that we're using. So my dog decided to join us. Okay, so here we go. I'm doing I've got a better spatula. This is got a sturdier spatula part, and so it'll do better for really cleaning out this pan. So once you get all of this into the bucket, you just let it sit. And I'll leave it and bottle honey tonight and show you all in the morning, but it's about 10:30 in the morning, and I might put it outside on my deck where it can be in a warm situation, and it might make the honey, it's not cold in here, but it's warmer outside, and it might make the honey go through the filter faster. And I will put those two frames also out on the table I have out there in the deck, and the bees will come and clean them off. Used to be I always put the honey frames in the front yard because the bees were in the backyard. This year I have bees in the front yard, so I'm going to put the honey frames in the backyard for the bees to clean off. And who comes to clean it off are not your own bees. Who comes to clean it off are bees from the neighborhood. Your own bees have a hard time telling each other about anything that's within 50 yards of the hive. And so that's why when you see bees on the flowers that you've planted, they're not your bees. They're bees from a different yard. So now I'm going to just get the last bit of this. Like I said, the bee only makes 1/4 of a teaspoon in her lifetime, and I have to wash my hands enough during this to wash some of that down the drain, but I want to take advantage of being able to eat every bit that I can. So I'm really trying to get all the excess out of this pan, and it's such nice thick honey because of that low moisture content. Honey has to be 18.6% or lower in order to be counted as honey. And also, it's not just a definition of honey in terms of it equals honey if it's less than 18.6%, but also if it's over 18.6%, it's more likely to ferment and mold and that kind of thing. It doesn't last well. Where this kind of honey could be in the Egyptian tombs and still come out just fine. See what I mean about my poor children in the brownie pan? I'm getting every inch of this. Okay. All right, we're going to call that a day. And put the top on it. Pull the handle up because that'll help keep the top on. And I'm going to take it outside and I'll be back with you this evening to bottle the honey. Hello everybody and welcome back. The honey has been sitting on my deck all day long in the warm sun and it has filtered down into the bottom of the bucket. There'll be more that filters, but the first day I usually bottle some and then I'll leave it alone for 3 or 4 more days and there'll be more to bottle. But for the moment, I don't know if you can see the line on the bottle, on the filtering bucket, that shows you how that there's about 1 inch, maybe 2 inches of honey in here. And from 2 frames, that's pretty good. So when you bottle honey, I've washed my hands. I'm also wearing gloves. I'm wearing gloves part because of the coronavirus, but also partly I always wear gloves when I do this because what you want to do with your jar, they just came out of the dishwasher and you want them to have no fingerprints on them if you're going to enter them in the honey show. I always bottle the first 3 bottles. Today I'm just going to do the first 2, but the first 3 bottles I bottle are for the honey show because if the honey had been a full box, the level of the honey would be about here. And as you pour the honey into your jar, you will get no air bubbles. We're going to get air bubbles today because the line of the honey is right in the middle of the honey gate. This thing is called a honey gate. So I'm going to make sure that the movie is still going before I start this. Yes, it is. It has this way, my camera, of just deciding on its own to turn off. Okay, so you undo the honey gate and see I have the jar positioned to take the honey and my hands shake and it's just going to be the way it is. Okay, so here comes the honey and I want to pour it until it's at the level that you need for the honey show, which is right above this ring. Now because it's just 2 frames, we're not going to get a ton of honey out of this, and I may have to tilt the bucket a little bit to make the flow happen a little bit better. I can tell this has air bubbles in it because it is looking cloudier than it looks. Usually looks very clear when it's been filtered like this and it doesn't have air bubbles in it, and I can see the air bubbles on the top of the light liquid that's forming in the jar. So we'll give it another little, just get the last little bit. We want to get it up just where we want it, which is just over that. And we want a little bit more than that. There we go. Woo, that's way more than that. Oh, okay. So I've filled that one a little full, and you turn your honey, you lock your honey gate. And then I want to be ready for the next one so that I don't lose the drip on the floor. That is really cloudy. That's interesting. Okay. I haven't ever bottled honey that had it look like that the first day. Okay. But that's because I usually have more honey in the bucket. Okay, here goes jar number 2. And I'll show you a little bit about the jars as soon as I get this one full. Now it's almost up to the top. And this one we're going to stop more or less in time. Okay, at the honey show you'll spoon off this extra honey that's at the top because we don't want it. So now that I've cut the honey bucket, the honey gate off, I can't talk today. Okay, now the reason I have plastic down there is that this is going to drip, and we're just going to let it drip onto the plastic. Okay, so you can see that I have filled it up to just above the rim, this little rim right here. And I'm going to put this kind of cap on. A well-known honey judge told me that this is the best cap to use. It shows the least defects, the gold cap. They also sell white ones and plastic ones. This one's a little above that line. But at the honey show, if I were going to enter this, I don't enter honey shows anymore because my hands have gotten so they shake so badly that I can't neaten up the jar the way you need to, and I just gave up. So those 2 jars are what would be our honey show quality jars. Then anything else that's in this bucket, I'm going to jar in the kind of jars that my son-in-law and I use when we're putting honey together to sell or give away to people. I've got to look for what did I do with my tops. I don't know if I have them upstairs still. I thought I did. Here they are. I can have a whole bag full of tops. Okay, so here we go with these little jars, which I think are cute. And the jars we just did, the queen line jars, hold 1 pound of honey. And this little jar holds 1/2 pound of honey. And you fill it again. You want to fill it, even though it's not going in a honey show in this jar, you want to fill it up tall as it should be if it were going in the honey show. So I set this one over and move the next one in and pour it. And these jars will be so much clearer in the morning. I'll take a picture of them before I do the hive inspection to add it to the hive inspection video tomorrow, so you can see how much clearer they'll be after they've sat in their bottles overnight. But these are like full of air bubbles. Amazing. Okay, here we're doing another one. And you get really acrobatic with the filter bucket over time, because it gets lower and lower, and to get the honey to actually go into the jars requires, I sometimes have to balance it on my forehead, which you all may see me do in a minute. So that means so far these 2 frames have produced 4 frames of honey. 4 pounds of honey. We should expect to get 6 pounds of honey, 3 pounds from each of those frames at best. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 pounds of honey. And I can see there are 2 more jars in here. There might be 1 more right now, and then there'll be another one after it sits overnight that drips out, that hasn't dripped out yet today. And I usually listen to music while I do this because it can get kind of boring. I bet y'all are bored, but I need to get this to a stopping point before I stop. Okay, there we go. So that's 4.5 pounds. And with this one, this will be our last jar that we can get off of this today. So we will have gotten 5 pounds of honey off of 2 medium frames, and we should have gotten 6 pounds, and we will in the end. We're just not getting 6 pounds right this second because it's only had today to filter. All right, we're about to be done with the honey, and I want to know when you all are watching it, if you have any questions, you can certainly ask me. Now I'm going to stop this for now because there's not another full jar in the bucket, but there will be, because there's still, I'll show you what it looks like on the inside in just a second. But first, you put the tops on this jar. Okay, 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6. If I were doing it for the honey show, this one had a little extra honey on the lip, and I would have cleaned it off first, but I'm not today. So this is really just honey that is not, doesn't have a definition in terms of whether I'm giving it away or selling it or what I'm doing with it. It's really nice honey. I'm very proud of this honey. Those bees did well. And I just went up and looked at the hive, the one that was dying, and it has a ton of bees hanging on the robber screen. So there's still plenty of live bees, and they don't have palsy, so they don't look like they're dying. So there you go. So that with this harvest today, this is not through yielding, but today we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pounds of honey, and at least another pound to go. So we'll have gotten 6 pounds of honey out of 2 medium frames that weren't the fullest frames ever, and one of them, remember, wasn't even capped on the other side. So that's a real good harvest. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like in the filter bucket at this point. So you can see that most of the honey is much drier wax than it was. It's still pretty sticky. And I get down in here, you can see that there's plenty of honey still in here filtering through. So that will keep filtering through. And I sort of stir it every once in a while to kind of inspire it. So thank you for watching, and that's the end of our inspection for today, and I look forward to any questions you have about honey harvest. I should say, looking over here, that these are piles of wax that I have from a harvest I did while it was still too cold to use the solar wax melter. This was the harvest of a hive that died and had plenty of honey on it. And I will talk to you on another inspection about how to build your own solar wax melter.